you have found yourself listening to an Irish League podcast. It's called Kicking Match. It comes at you every single week, and my name is Peter Cinnamon. And on this fine edition of the pod, the first of the three big pieces of Irish League silverware was divvied out this weekend. Linfield leaving the bandsiders feeling blue as they finally rise to the big occasion. Plus, we give a spin of that relegation tombola as the Ports apply themselves and leave it late. But not that late, to win out at Newry in a dramatic thriller. Plus, Hamilton continues the Lurgan Blue Hoodoo over Glentoran, and winning away at Seaview continues to stake its claim as the Irish League's ultimate final boss. Okay, so the snow may have come and had gone very swiftly, but I would like to suggest that potentially it wasn't prepared for all the hot action that took place across the weekend on the pitches. Yes, it somewhat messed up the whole Glentoran postponement, but sure, who's keeping score here? We had loads of games, and as we enter the final few weeks of the season, hitting a wee follow on Spotify is one of the few ways that you can make sure you don't miss out on some tender, juicy Irish League podcast action as we hit the thick end of the wedge, which I hope and presume is the good part of the wedge in this analogy. Regardless, we plow on. Double trouble for you this week. 2 guests for the price of 1. They are vloggers. They are avid Irish League content creators. They use TikTok, which means I can't guarantee that they actually remember a time before a 12-team league. Regardless, a huge kicking match welcome for the debut of Ross Welsh, Joe McCallion of Around the Grounds NI. Taking it in turns. Hello, Ross.
Hello.
Ahoy, Joe.
Hello.
Hopefully we're going to double up the drama, double up the hot takes this week. Before we go anywhere, Ross, totally standard name, not going to say anything bad about it. Joe McCallion is one of the most Irish League names I've ever heard in my life. I want to go on to transfer mark because I'm definitely sure if a Joe McCallion hasn't transferred from Institute to Dungannon over the past 50 years, where is Marshall Gillespie? Surely there's a Joe McCallion out there. I don't have an Irish League name. Joe, do you feel like you have been honoured with such a privilege?
I think so. I think I was born for this, to be honest. I must be with a name like that. I actually think there was a Joe McCallion. Used to play for Derry, possibly. Derry City.
It feels quite there. I think that's why I put the Institute thing in there. It's up there. You've got plenty of the Smiths and the Kearns and the... I don't know. It's a weird thing to try and nail down an Irish League name, but it definitely exists. Emmett something is always an Irish League name. Standard. Anyway, we'll get into actually some serious talk right now. It's great to have the two of you. I'll let you reveal your affiliations in a bit, but first, before we go anywhere, let's get the plug in early. Around the Grounds NI. How did it come to be, and what is it for the uninitiated out there that's listening to this?
So just before COVID hit, we were looking to go to more Irish League, basically, and what better way to do it than give ourselves some accountability, keep the people waiting. So we basically, there's a YouTuber, Smiv, we basically copied him, rate the facilities, the value, the atmosphere, and then the match itself. Everything out of 10, and then you get an overall score. We've then moved into making wee videos of our match day experience, and we think we're all right.
From an outsider point of view, it's nice to have that little short snippet of what was going on. I know the league does this kind of uncut series. It feels akin to that if people want to visualize it, but in turn it has a real fan spin on it. And you've been there for a couple of cracking games as well. Is there a big highlight from, I know there's a few of you that do it, that you're like, thank goodness I've got the camera out and I'm filming this game?
Yeah, well, look, I will say about myself, I rarely miss a goal when it comes to recording them. I was at the Crusaders Cliftonville match, and that Forsyth free kick was absolutely brilliant. It was a brilliant game as well. It's something that we've really noticed since we started doing this, going to more games. You realise just how good some of the matches on your doorstep really are when you get out there.
So are you long-term Irish League aficionados? Is this the whole story of parent bringing you to games, or was there something that drew you one day and now you're out there with the phone capturing the drama and the aura for other people to watch online?
Well, when I was very young, my dad would have took me to the Linfield matches, then just fell out of the way of it, just playing football at the weekends, just didn't have the time to go. And then when you get in that awkward teenage stage, you don't have money. and your mum and dad aren't giving you money anymore, so we fell out of the way of it. And then once you start getting your own money in, it's a great way to spend it. So we've really thrown ourselves back into it. We both play football, so Saturdays are difficult, but any midweek games or the Friday nights are brilliant. And the Sundays this season, if there's a Sunday game, we're there. You can't beat them.
I think there's a little humble brag of we're quite good at football hidden amongst there, that, hey, I was so good at my standard, I can't make it to the other games. Joe, I will also put the same question to you so you can pin your colours to the mast. What Irish League team does your own dear heart bleed for?
I'm a Linfield fan, big red man.
And how did you guys come together to be a part of this page, this account?
We went to school together, and then for uni we've moved in together, so we're right on the Lisburn Road, so it couldn't be handier for my neck of the woods. So it was a no-brainer, really.
It's like a wee mini influencer Irish League house that's being developed on there on the mean streets of Belfast City. So we've got a blue man and a red man. Handy. Gets me to cover a few more bases. We will start with the big game. There's 11,000 people there. The League Cup final. I thought going into it that this could have been somewhat of a season-defining game for either team. Both of them have had a bumpy ride along the way, and as much as it wouldn't take their season over the top, getting a bit of silverware, having a big day out at a final could somewhat rub away the bruises, rub away kind of those stains, and give a bit of gloss to this season. And for Linfield, it did just that. 2-0 winners against a beleaguered Coleraine. Is this exactly what the Blues needed, Ross?
I think what you were saying, putting gloss on a season, I think that applies to Coleraine more than the Blues. I think it's more salvage this season rather than put a gloss on it for us. I think that was it was a real must-win game. I've sort of conceded the league, so I think we really, really had to win that, being out of the other cups. And I don't think I could have taken another penalty shootout loss if that happened, so thank goodness we didn't get there.
At 0-0, I did think this can't go this way. Is it 4? I would say so far, but I don't know if it can go any other way. 4, well, it depends if we get to the European playoffs or not, but 4 penalty losses, like that is torture. I don't think most sides can accept 1 or 2, but surely after Europe and then you get to the other ones, you're just thinking, not again.
No, the European one was such a heartbreaker because up to 90 minutes in both legs, we won that tie 4-0 or 3-0 on aggregate. All their goals in out of time, and then none of our penalties were particularly good that night. The Irish Cup, Lauren have put us out twice on penalties. They seem to just have a good record on pens, and then we beat Cliftonville on penalties in the Shield. That was all right, but even the penalties that night weren't great. So I don't know what's going on the training ground. Just thank God we didn't get there.
It hasn't been a season for any teams really, even in some of the shootout wins, bar maybe Lauren. Like, I can't believe that Joe Gormley and Matthew Shevlin had a penalty shootout against each other and they were pumping them over the bar and missing them. So it hasn't been a great time for kicking it in from a couple of yards out. But with that win, is there an optimism now that perhaps, hey, we aren't in control of these games that Lauren have, but perhaps between now and the end of the season, if we keep our noses clean and start winning consistently against the big teams, hey, it might not mean there's a trophy, but there's maybe something to build on, and there's optimism going into the summer and beyond, because for Linfield, really from that moment of that European loss, it just feels like recovery and this downbeat attitude that has hung over the fan base and the team and the club all year, really.
There's definitely been something sort of lingering around the club. I remember after one of the European games, we went away to Carrick and they beat us, and we've never really shook that all year. It feels obviously we've had good spells, around Boxing Day when we beat the Glens. You felt like we're on a bit of a crest of a wave, but I think definitely the cup it gives you a wee bit of hope back, and we should be aiming for second, definitely. If, as you said, if we're perfect, if we can pick up 12, 13 points out of the split, then you never know. If we can manage to beat Larne, which is no easy task, obviously, at the minute, then you have to say it's sort of on. But I think it's difficult. Larne are just looking so good. I think it's difficult to see them slipping up. But second and avoiding that European playoff, that's crucial, I think, because it's anybody's game once you get into that.
A word on Coleraine. All the responses I've had from people that I know who follow the club feel very much like they felt as though the Bandsiders didn't turn up in this big final. They didn't stand up to the occasion, and they somewhat let Linfield dictate things, and they were pretty much rolled over throughout the 90 minutes. From an opposition point of view, do you feel that's a fair reflection? It never really felt as though, despite the goals not absolutely flying in, it never felt as though it was in doubt from a certain time in that game that Linfield were going to keep the pressure on, get the goals, and see this tie out.
I think that's spot on. There wasn't really a point in that game where I was worried. Coleraine had chances, but I thought Chris Johns was more than comfortable all through the game. And then, especially once it went 2-0, it was like a pin had hit that Coleraine support, which was great up to that point. And you could tell it was just sort of flat. I don't think Coleraine were great. I don't think Linfield were particularly good either. I think it sort of mirrored the 2-0 at home a few weeks back. Linfield never really getting out of second or third gear because they didn't have to.
And I don't want to overstate one game on Sunday, but I do think this meant a lot more to Coleraine, and reflecting on the season that they have had. Yes, in August, I don't really think they genuinely believed that they were going to be title contenders, but they were kind of joking about with it, tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, it could be, we'll see how it goes. And there was a lot of hype. Matthew Shevlin has been on fire at times. It looked as though they had this really exciting team. They came out the worst for wear in some of the big games, but perhaps they could have turned that around later. All of a sudden, they went in this real hot streak at the back, not letting in a lot of goals. But since the new year, there's been ups. There's clearly been a couple of bumps. But for Coleraine, I think going into the rest of the season, and look, there's not many games to go, they've still got a fighting chance of getting Europe. They've got a lot of questions to answer in regards to their identity, how they look to compete. Can they realistically compete long term? And is it a case of reloading in the summer and going for it harder and stronger again? Or is there a few things that they might need to look at and tinker and almost bring it back before they can take things forward again?
Do you know what it is? Obviously, they went on that hot streak, but it's so hard for them to sustain that over the course of the season when they're not full time. And it's hard to see that changing anytime soon. Now, I get that Cliftonville claim they aren't full time, but it's so hard as a part time team, and you're always going to have that burst. Like I'm just looking at the top 6 here, even 7 if you want to go to Carrick. Every team's had a real good spell where you've thought they are going to really push on now. It's obviously hard to sustain that. The Coleraine, you're right, at one point Shevlin looked like he was untouchable. Not sure why the Blues ever let him go. And then when you're dependent on one man to that degree, it's tough when he has the odd off day. Like, they went on these big runs, but then they get the bottom 6 team who'd hold them to a draw or sneak a win, and that seemed to derail them for a couple of weeks. But they can definitely be up into that top 3, and then once you get to the playoff, they have to be thinking this is anyone's game here, especially if Larne go on to win the Irish Cup. Then you have to be thinking, why not?
I'm going to throw it back over to you, Joe, because I'm sure there'll be plenty of Coleraine fans who will be waiting, looking at their watch going, hey, are we going to talk about the penalty decision? It led to the goal which Chris Shields was the man who dispatched the penalty to make it 2-0 and somewhat put the game to bed at that time. As a neutral, was it a pen?
Yeah, look, we were right in front of it. For me, it was a penalty. I mean, he was looking for it. It was smart. He got in there. There was only one thing on his mind. It was that, let me get a penalty here. But it absolutely was a penalty. I mean, I was surprised that there was that much sort of debate on it, to be honest.
I would agree with you there. Hard times for Coleraine. Look, they've still got plenty to play for. Leaving it on this question, Ross, where will Sunday be remembered? And does it help Healy going into the assessment when it comes to the end of the season? Or has he still got a lot of things to tick off before we'll look back on this as just below serviceable? Will this do anything? Will it be remembered as a final in Linfield's fans' memories?
I don't think so. I get, Linfield win all the time. It's just a League Cup at the end of the day. That's not what Linfield should be winning. David's fine in his job no matter what. I think unless he wants to leave, I think his contract is next summer. So I think he's fine in that regard. It's maybe hindered him in that the board could now look at it and say, look, there's a trophy, so we'll maybe not invest as much as we would have done if it was a trophyless season. But I think David's fine, and I think it'll all soon be forgotten about, especially if we don't qualify for Europe.
Ross, that's hilarious to hear Linfield fans saying, hey, it's just another trophy. The question will be, are we looking at a trophyless season for Cliftonville? Look, before Monday night's game, they were definitely behind the 8 ball. But I think you could see going into that big game up in North Belfast, Cliftonville going to Seaview. Seaview has just been a place where Crusaders have shown their best form. They wanted to give you a bloody nose and derail your title challenge. 2-2 it ends, and really the true winner of that game was Larne. Overall, do you feel it was fair on the night where the spoils were split?
Well, we obviously should have won it at the end, that Gormley chance. I woke up in cold sweats last night of how he missed it. I was a wee bit confident going into it. The issue was, I think in the end, Crusaders put us down to their level in terms of they made it a very physical game. Didn't really play our football, especially in the second half, started putting it up in the air, especially when Chicken came on as well towards the end. Really started playing into their hands. It was, overall though, it was actually quite a decent game. I would say 2-2 probably was fair.
But realistically, it wasn't good enough when it comes to where the Reds' ambitions are. This season feels like it's the continuation of last year's Odyssey. In many ways, it's testament to what Paddy McCallion has been able to do to keep the energy up, to keep the fight going, and run it so close to the wire. And look, it isn't over yet. 2 seasons in a row. Is there a part where if the Gibson Cup doesn't end up in North Belfast this year, is there a moment or a couple of games you'll look back upon and go, that's really where it all didn't go right for us? That's the sliding doors moment where we need to come up big at that point. We didn't, and that's why we don't have silverware this season.
Yeah, definitely. There's quite a few of those games. Even thinking back to the quarterfinal loss against Dungannon, really Dungannon coming to us at Solitude, we shouldn't be losing. I mean, it was 2-1 in the end, but it was a consolation goal right in injury time. Games like that we probably need to be better in. It's frustrating, some of those draws. Even thinking back to the split last season, it was the same. Drawing all the games apart from Glentoran on the last day. We're doing so well. You'd just like to be more clinical in some of those games.
I'll also say they got a hiding on Boxing Day away to Crusaders, which can happen. But maybe that's something where, as nice as Paddy McLaughlin's football is, just go and take your point. Sit in, take your point, tricky place to go, and then move on. But one point might not matter at the end of the season, I suppose.
We don't have the same opportunity to talk about Larne right now because they didn't have a game over the weekend. They had that excellent draw in their eyes against Linfield all the way last week. But when I sit back and reflect on Larne's season, I do it via the podcast. It's the first time I've done this podcast, the first time where I can look back and go, right, this is what happened. And usually for me, I try and put like the story of the week, whatever the big highlight reel moment or win, as like the program image or the story, right? And Larne are currently sitting here 6 points above Cliftonville in second, 7 above Linfield in third. And they've only ever featured as what I describe as cover stars of the podcast. And there's only 12 teams once. Wow. And that, for me, tells you how winning a league title is never boring. But it does somewhat tell a story of how this title challenge has been built. It's been built week to week, lacking in drama. Yes, it absolutely had that big win against Linfield in October, which I've talked about a lot, which was the one time where they were the cover stars, the away team in black. But outside of that, yes, they've had great results. I can remember against Crusaders at home. They've done well against Glentoran at times, but you kind of look at it and they haven't needed to score a whole load of goals because they've kept so many out at the back. We can talk about so many of their highlight players: Miller, Bonus, I love Sule, Cosgrove on the wing, on that kind of defensive wing role has been brilliant. If Larne do take home the title, and right now they are strong favourites too, efficiency has been one of the top words to describe it. And that's impressive in itself in a league that's usually blood and thunder, ramshackle moments, 3 goals being scored within 2 seconds. Larne have just calmly got on with it, and they'll not care if they're sitting there with what will be an historic title sitting in Inver Park.
Oh, they won't give a monkeys. Like, they're the epitome of just getting on with your business and then letting other people do what other people are going to do. I think the Glens have taken a lot of the media coverage this year because they've had their good spell and then they've had their bad spell. You know, as I said, everyone's had their spurt. I can't remember Larne like needing a late winner for when they beat the Welders in the cup. I can't remember them needing a late winner. I can't remember them coming back from however many goals. Boxing Day, was it the Drew with Carrick at home? Nothing. They just went and won their next game. They'll just spin off a load of wins, and that's all they're doing.
And you said something there earlier, Ross, about how perhaps your view on the Cliftonville situation has been that they haven't taken the point and sort of killed the game when they needed to. That's what Larne's done. We joked at the start of the season, my goodness, that was the most boring opening to the season when they got the draw against Glentoran. But then we saw Glentoran go on a run and you're like, well, that was actually a really brilliant result. They've had 0-0s against Crusaders and the like, and nothing epitomises that more than that 0-0 against Linfield at home. Look, winning that game would have somewhat put the title to bed going into the split. But the most important thing there was to not let Linfield win and get into this. And for me, going back to that game, I don't think Linfield really turned up and went through the gears that really troubled Larne. But I talked about it on a little short video on social media. I must say, moments of the season, regardless of where the title goes, that Chris John save was something else. Last minute, the ball's deflected. He dives. It looks good from aesthetics point of view. And if it was somehow to lead to Linfield either getting second or higher, that's a moment. That's what the season's all about. It's somewhat a collection of moments.
If we end up winning the league by 1 point, that Chris Jones will never have to buy a pint in the whole of South Belfast ever again. Just an incredible save. As you said, Linfield just not at the races. Larne doing what they had to do. They came with a game plan to frustrate us, and they did. I can only remember Vertainen had a couple of chances, but they didn't need to win. That was the thing. It's boring to watch as a Linfield fan. I'm sure Larne fans were loving it. It's boring to watch, but if you win every game 1-0, you know you're going to win the league. Few 0-0s against your big rivals in there, you'll win the league. So as frustrating as it is, a great save has potentially saved us, even if it ends up getting a second. Happy days, but just a brilliant save. Couldn't believe it.
Well, talk about people who potentially might never need to buy a pint in a certain area. If the Curry escape does actually happen, Benny Iggy Hon can get a statue. To quote one of your reporters on the day, possibly the greatest game of football ever. It's definitely up there as one of the games of the season in this league. 5:30 on a Saturday down at Newry. Niall Curry of Portadown said, look, if we don't win this, we're pretty much out. We're pretty much relegated. And with 2 minutes ticking on, that's the way it was looking. Incredible scenes, baffling end to a game. Newry were minutes away from putting the nail in Portadown's coffin. But at the end of 95 minutes, Portadown lead 4-3 over Newry. This is the Irish League all over. Incredible scenes, an amazing result. And I often thought and tried to plan out, right, if Portadown is going to survive somehow, how would it happen? And you have to say, and it's not guaranteed, if Portadown were to somehow survive, you kind of knew something like this was going to happen. It wasn't going to be plain sailing boring. Something crazy like this was going to happen. And my goodness, Portadown live to fight another day.
I dragged my dad down to it on his wedding anniversary. Don't know if my mum was too happy, but got him out of the house. And we're walking back to the car after, and I said to him, when else would you be in Newry at 10-8 on a Saturday night? Why would you not want to be here? Genuinely one of the best games of football I've ever seen. When Newry went 3-2 up, it looked like the Ports packed it in. It sort of looked like that was it. And then out of nowhere, that Josh Archer finish, it's not really being talked about because it gets lost in the drama of it a wee bit, but that is a great finish on a pitch like that as well. They just sweep that into the corner. And then Big Benny steps up when he needs to. I was saying, proper your dad stuff. I was saying his kit's clean as anything. He hasn't done anything. He's not putting himself about. And then he pops up in what must have been the 103rd minute. I don't know, but the drama.
Limbs, pandemonium behind a quite busy, quite a lot of people there behind that stand down at Newry. And, for Portadown, it started really well. They knew what they had to do, get the 3 points. Stephen Teggart gets a goal. Paul McElroy then makes it 2. 20 minutes in, they're absolutely cruising. All they need to do is hold on and maybe try and turn things up, turn the heat up, and maybe put this game to bed. Then there is an OG from a corner which the referee said to Niall Curry, according to his interview after the game, that he apologised, shouldn't have given. The Ports need to defend that. Bit of an ugly OG off Chris Rogers. And then, before the half's out, probably the best player on the pitch, McGovern gets the goal. He wheels away. At half-time, it's all even. And Newry could have taken that all day. In the second half, do you feel as though a win for Portadown was a fair reflection on the football that you saw?
They definitely had their chances. I mean, Russell missed that good header at the back post. I just don't think he was expecting it to reach him. The keeper sort of flaps at it. And the keeper, that double save was fantastic to keep it at 2-2. Then I'm struggling to think of many Newry chances. More the first half, they were having chances. The big fella up front, he was running the back line ragged, and McGovern had a few chances. But second half, up to the Newry goal, I thought the Ports were very good money for a win. After the goal for 11 minutes, I thought Newry were very good value for the win. And then all of a sudden, I think once the third went in, they might as well just give them the fourth, because you could just tell the momentum it was happening.
When I look at this result, it's easy to say, hey, how amazing this is for Portadown. But looking at it from the Newry perspective, you're at home, you have pulled back a 2-0 deficit to make it 3-0. You've had a great run of chances yourself. All you need to do is to see this out. Even a draw would have really suited you. And to think that you're into stoppage time and to throw it away on your own patch like that, from a better goalkeeping here, getting rid of the ball early there, that must be crushing. And you wonder, going in to this stretch, will this give Portadown a boost? But more importantly, Newry have struggled for goals. They get 3 here, but they've struggled for a lot of goals, particularly over the past few months. They haven't been getting a lot of results. That pitch is really sticky down there. It has really been all season down at the showgrounds. Darren Mullen has a lot to do to pick these players up, because they were so close to where they need to be, and now they have to start all over again and keep this Ports team away, because right now they're one of the form teams in the league. Yes, the teams they played against does help, but I think if you did the form table, Portadown are 3rd or 4th, 3 wins out of 4. It's amazing stuff.
I think Newry are on their knees at the minute. I think it's sort of flying under the radar since they beat Carrick 4-1 in November. 2 wins since then, and one of them wins is the Portadown one that was given to them, rightly or wrongly. I would say wrongly, but I don't make them decisions, so it doesn't really matter. But going into that split, momentum's huge, and the Ports, if one man's going to get a team up for a relegation battle, it's Niall Curry, and they are just looking. I don't know if it's just recency bias and I saw that performance, but I just think they're going to do it.
The one thing at the start of the season, the first few months, that I felt as though I was constantly regurgitating from what ex-manager Paul Doolan was saying was, we've got no strikers, we can't score goals, and that was clear as day when you look at our results at the time. Well, the past few games, Portadown have scored 20 in the league. Really, they've scored 23. They've scored 10 in their last 4. Yes, they've conceded 6 in their last 2. And they'll take wins like that every day of the week, but scoring goals was important, and they've got 2-3-1 wins, lose 3-1, 4-3. But scoring goals could be the key. They've got McElroy firing, Stephen Teggart's getting in there, Kyra Friel could pop up as well. Alan Sullivan's been this real super sub for them coming on, and perhaps that could be the difference. But it was their defence that almost let them down. You look at those goals from Newry. Yes, Newry kept on pushing, kept playing the balls over the top, but there was significant mistakes there and in the Carrick game, which I saw, where you're thinking you can't let that happen. So Ports have work to do at the back. So far up top, it could be the things that could change it for them. I'm going to go to my poll this week. Last week, I put it out there to say, hey, if you're neutral, which one of Larne, Cliftonville, or the Blues would you like to see win the league? Unsurprisingly, Larne have ran out clear winners there. My question, and I'll put it to you guys to kick it off. If you're on Spotify, go down to the poll. You can vote all the way up to Monday afternoon after this is published. Right now, if you had to bet your own cash, who would you say is the more likely to finish 12th? Is it Portadown? Is it Dungannon? Or is it Newry? Portadown are currently sitting there on 15 points, so they've got it all to do. Dungannon are sitting on 20. Newry have got 23. 7 games to play. They'll all play each other down there. If you had to put your own neck on the line, who do you say is sitting there in 12th come the end of April?
Here is Cheltenham. We'll probably have to go with a risky bet, will I? I'm going to say Portadown. I think there's a real belief about that team. And like you were saying earlier, Newry probably, I'm saying that Portadown will get off the bottom. And I'm thinking maybe Dungannon are going to end up at the bottom spot. I think Portadown are going to leapfrog them.
I don't know how big your Portadown viewership is, but it's going to double after what I'm about to say. Portadown are finishing 10th. They're not even bothering with the playoff. Portadown are finishing 10th. I think Dungannon are going down in 12th. All eyes on the Irish Cup. I half fancy them to sneak something against Crusaders, and then it'll be all eyes on the final. And then I think Newry are just on such a slide. I think the Ports are comfortable, so Dungannon bottom for me.
They've got it all to do. Please do vote. We'll talk about it next week. On the whole goal things where I said with Portadown about how they had only scored 20. Realistically, it was 23. You look at Dungannon, they have only scored 20 goals themselves all season. They had a chance, the same way Portadown had a chance this week against Carrick Rangers, one of those teams. You're at home, you're against one of the bottom 6, and that could have been a chance to get a point, just to get anything. They were in striking distance. And of course, when you're looking to get something magic, pull it out of a hat, there's David Cushley doing David Cushley things. He's pulling something out of a hat. Carrick run away with the points out of Stagmore Park. Let's talk about that goal from David Cushley. He has no right in hitting that from maybe 30 yards out. But you must say, when you saw it and you saw the man wrapping his laces around it, you're like, yeah, that's what David Cushley does. He has won almost 2 of them a season. He's always had that in his locker.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. You imagine there was probably a few old lads there at the time said, Jesus, don't hit it, just as he turns towards it. But it was an absolutely brilliant strike. And then even he had a free kick as well. He forced a save. That man knows how to score a lovely goal, as you say.
Hitting it on the volley, so sweet. And it gives them such a great spot now going into the next few games. How will they keep the tempo up? Because I think if they were to finish 7th and be in that European playoff, they'd be doing backflips. They would feel like, what a season. They haven't dropped off in the same way they did last season. They've recruited really well so far. It'd be a real great vindication of them and really impressive season for them. Of course, I also have to highlight my prediction from last week. I felt very confident that actually Glentoran going down to Taylor's Avenue, Carrick were going to look good. Check my phone, like 3-0 up after like 30 seconds. I was like, well, I'm going to have to own that in my way there. The big shock, or was it even a shock, at the Oval, Glenavon, the kryptonite of East Belfast. They say, hey, you took half our team from 5 years ago. Our team right now, that's the team you want. Coming up big. Another poor result for Rodney McAree. This Glenavon season has been topsy-turvy, just like the way really Glenavon's results has been. Glenavon have taken 7 points from these games and have been the fly in the ointment on numerous occasions against Glentoran. I heard a theory of why it seems to be that Glenavon can take it to these top 6 teams like Crusaders, like Glentoran when they need to start winning games, and then they go and lose to Newry, lose to Portadown. Theory is that the way they're built is they are able to take on the pressure and they can bang it. They can go straight up on the counter-attack, and that's what they are built for. Are they just the team that's up for the big occasions, or is there something to this counter-attacking, catch them on the break? Hamilton ball, will call it theory.
I like that theory. I like the Hamilton ball name even more, but I like that theory. I think they're just set up as a small team when I'm sure their fans want to go in and 7th as the bare minimum for them. But it works when you go to the big teams, but you can't have like Newry at home and sit back and let them have the ball and expect a break, because that's probably how they're coming to you. So Gary Hamilton's been in that job a long time. You think he'd be not long figuring that out, but it seems to just be the story of their season, as you were saying.
It's hard because you sit there and think, if you're building the Glenavon squad, you're thinking, right, I can get good results against some of the teams up near the top. Surely it mustn't be hard to craft it together, get these players to do well against teams that they would believe they have better players than. It's going to be an interesting summer. I've said this a few times right now. Where Glenavon go, do they start doing what Carrick's done and gambling on a few veterans? Look, Glenavon are well known for having a go at the veterans, but you know, both those goals against Glentoran are somewhat breakaways, shows the quality that they do have in Fitzpatrick. How they can pull it all together, I don't know. But for Glentoran, I doubt either of you guys were crying for them over the weekend. But this season has just been so all over the place. Like, they've had their inconsistencies as well. Usually it's been in real bursts. But to take those 7 points away from Glentoran, if they want to be doing something next season, they've got to turn it around. And I don't know what it is. Yes, they've had the odd injury here or there, but it's not like Glenavon haven't warned them already this season that this could have happened.
Yeah, I mean, Glentoran are just beyond strange this season. I mean, a few months ago we were looking at them, sort of thinking, is this one of like the best Irish League teams we've seen? I mean, they were conceding barely any goals, and then, like you're saying, it was like 2 breakaway goals that they conceded there at the weekend. It's very strange, and it makes you think. You know, we were talking about belief earlier. Do they almost believe that they are going to fall apart? Do they almost get into it themselves? Because it happens every season, and yeah, I mean, like I say, when they were as good as they were, there was always still a bit of a thing of they're going to fall off at some point here. The wheels are just going to come off, and they absolutely have.
I think it's a personnel thing a wee bit. Joe Crow coming in's a massive positive for them, and McMenamin is going to create chances for you, and there's clearly real talent in that squad, but I don't think they're far away. A tweak here or there, in the same way that Larne did. They went for some areas of younger talent who have had good opportunities in the league, and you can see that with Devlin. That's been a really good signing for them, but in turn they get nailed on players like Miller. Do they look out there and go, we want someone like a Fitzpatrick, someone who really what Crusaders would usually do, go bring them in, elevate them, and make them key parts of it? It's going to be an interesting summer. And look, they're not out of it yet, for sure. They are tricky enough in the playoff, and for them, it's about keeping healthy. I think is the key thing now for Glentoran. Get the confidence, get a bit of resilience, because when they're going, when they are feeling themselves, they are super dangerous. But it's how they take on these next games. Can they get a bit of belief in themselves to power on? Because a second season without Europe is a hard copybook to look at for Mr. Ali Poor.
It's a hard sell to the fans, and I think their problem is, you look at that Glentoran team and where are the leaders? You look at every other team in the top 6 and you can point out that he's their man who's banding them together. But you look at that Glentoran team, especially since Paddy McCallion has stepped back. You're just as good a signing as Fitzpatrick would be. I don't think he would be that leader that they need. I'm not saying they would get Sule, but they need someone like a Sule or like a Jamie Mulgrew sort of type to just come in, midfield general, get everyone together. Because I'm not sure Rodney McAree is enough of. He's not a man to throw the teacups in the changing rooms. I think I just don't see where that leadership is, and I think that could be why they sort of fall off towards the business end of seasons.
We power through and we look ahead to some of the games coming up this weekend. Before we do it, regular listeners will know this is a little interlude where I get to put some of the big topics to the people that come on the programme. Being around the grounds, you've seen it all across the top division. We look ahead to this Friday, and this Friday is St. Patrick's Day. And yes, some of the big debates in the league are summer football, all-Ireland league, etc., etc. You somewhat talked about it in your connection to playing football and how that sometimes always doesn't have great synchronization with watching football. Friday nights, how big a fan are you of them? Because they're doing gangbusters in the League of Ireland. I asked the question, do we need to potentially start thinking about the same way we do these Tuesday night fixtures? Thinking of doing a whole slate of games on a Friday and see how they do. Because in the league, you're having some big... Lauren clearly love it. They've been doing it for the past few years. It's pretty much part of their MO in building a fan base. Now, Curry has come out and said, absolutely love it. Saturday evenings, Friday nights, let's go. And they seem to have got a bigger boost in their attendance. Do we make it #official? I'd like not go full whack, as League of Ireland kind of is teetering around. Do we go, right, 4 times a season, once every couple of months, all the games are Friday?
I think we absolutely do. I mean, there's something just different about football under lights. It is brilliant every single time. There is a different atmosphere, whether it's the fact that more people are able to go on a Friday night or whatever it is. You know, it's the start of the weekend. It is just so much better. And like you're saying, it caters, you know, if you watch football, chances are you probably play it at some point, you know. And for us, Friday night, every single time we are there, no matter what the match is. If there's a Friday night game, we're like, well, we're not doing anything else. We may as well head up to it. Friday nights, 5:30 on a Saturday, and Sunday matches, all 3 of them will just elevate the league massively.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go as far as like the League of Ireland seem to only be Friday nights at the minute, but definitely the biggest game. I'm not huge on the BBC streaming the 5:30 on a Saturday because it's so easy to just run into a big Premier League game that's on Sky and people are going to watch that. But the Friday nights, I think it's just a great niche in the market. As you said, Lauren love it. Newry seem to have found the 5:30 on a Saturday market. It gets more people to the games, definitely. Like, even people we play with go to games that aren't when we are playing. So I think it's just so good for the league.
Joe, with your beloved Cliftonville, you've been pioneers when it comes to the synthetic surface. I think it was a cheeky question that was asked to Northern Ireland boss Michael O'Neill what he thought of the Windsor pitch. I've seen it at times. It is not being good. Obviously, the idea of that going synthetic is completely not going to happen, you know, fantasy. But with Portadown talking about redeveloping Shamrock Park and that going synthetic, that would make it a 50-50 league if we base it on the teams that are currently in the top flight. There's a lot of people who are proponents of the synthetic surface. You know, people would say, hey, you know, it would help with the weather, it gets games going, there's a chance for revenue for the clubs. Are you guys of that ilk where it's like, hey, more synthetic surfaces, have at it, let's go? Or is there a thing in the back of your head where you kind of go, okay, some of them are good, but situation where there's potentially 8 or 9 teams that are playing on synthetic surfaces, that could be an issue?
I don't really mind the synthetic surface. You know, I'm not massively for it. I'm not massively against it either. I can see the benefit of them, like you say, keeping the matches going, especially in this country. There was a point there where Glentoran, how many games did they have off because of their pitch? The other thing as well, it benefits the clubs. Midweek, I'm sure Lauren probably do. You can rent out those pitches and stuff, make a wee bit of money. It helps the clubs, especially if it is those clubs lower down. But some of those pitches, I mean, Newry's pitch at the weekend there was absolutely shocking. I think for those clubs, certainly it would definitely benefit them.
I'm much the same. No real strong feelings on it. I think leave it up to the players. They're the ones playing on it. That the new union they've got going, stick it to them. Let them ballot their members, because at the end of the day, it's them playing on it. I don't know. I don't think you really run into trouble with UEFA if you're getting into the later stages of European competition. But then I would assume if a team gets to the groups, they would probably play at Windsor anyway. So as you said, I don't think it'll ever not be grass. But if it's safe, then I'm all for. Why not?
We dink and dive into the games happening this weekend on Paddy's Day, Friday. Could be a bumper crowd there for Larne. They take on Ballymena. Ballymena will be coming off a game against Glentoran, which will have already happened by the time that you listen to this. I've seen Ballymena somewhat sleepwalk their way through games, particularly since January. They've been popping up with the odd goal here or there. It would be a real turn up for the books if they were to get a result against Larne, who just need to do the simple things, as we said they've been doing all season long. We start to see if they've got the mettle for it. An early goal for Larne would be very handy, I think, for their fans on this occasion.
I think an early goal for Larne, everybody can just go home. That's nothing against Ballymena. I think that's against the vast majority of the league. I think they're just so good at controlling games, as we've talked about. Larne, what can you say that hasn't been said about them? They're imperious. Ballymena, I definitely think, are not the team to beat them. I think Davy McDade he's wasted a little bit up there. Dress rehearsal for the semi-final, but I can see both those games only going one way.
Imperious. I'm going to write that down. Would you describe Cliftonville? Well, you wouldn't be able to describe Cliftonville as imperious. Solitude, as we see a repeat of the quarter-final where Dungannon come up the North Belfast trying to repeat what they did only a few weeks ago. For Cliftonville, I think it's about sticking the blinkers on, really, and just dealing with it and just not pretending, because the benefit here now for Larne is that they could go 9 points clear by the time Cliftonville play their game. So it's a strange mental game. In turn, if it doesn't go well, Cliftonville are like, here we go, the comeback is on.
Yeah, we cannot let that, if it gets to 9 points, we can't let it stay that way. We can't be getting beat again by Dungannon at home. Like I said earlier, it's not a fixture that we should really be losing, especially if we do have aspirations of getting that first spot. To keep our title hopes alive, we really do need to win at the weekend.
How will this season be viewed upon if there isn't silverware at the end of it? Will second place or even third place be viewed as we're nearly there, we go again? Or will there be a certain feeling within the fan base of the window for this team is getting smaller and tighter, and you've not missed it, but look, Gormley's going to be a year older. You've got to look at some areas of the team. Look, you've got some youth in there, clearly, and I'm not just talking about Sean Moore, but regardless of how this ends, from a Reds point of view, will it feel as though we're nearly there, let's reload? Or will you feel, we may have missed our opportunity with the team that we have here?
I think it would be a big blow. It is going to, be a tough feeling at the end of the season to think, there was points in that season where you're thinking there's definitely a bit of silverware somewhere in here. And especially with last season as well, the fact that we did pick up some, if we then go this season without when we thought we could have kicked on, it will be disappointing. But I think there will also be a bit of a thing of, there's still positives to take from this season. Like you say, the youth that we have, I hope we keep on Sean Moore next season. I'd love to see him at Solitude again. Who knows? But there will certainly be positives to take, and we will go into the next season positive again. But there will also be, a real thing of there was a wasted opportunity there.
Do you think there's clearly a talk of Sean Moore being sold and that generating six figures worth of cash? Look, there's plenty of things where that could go to. Do you think of how close Cliftonville have been? Do you think they'll start doing, because they have done it a lot over the past few years? Do you think they'll go, right, we are going to drop, not say £100,000, but you could see them dropping a certain whack on, let's look at some of the big talents in the lower end of the league, a Reece Campbell or someone of that ilk, where Cliftonville go, we're only, we want to get a defender in, we want to get maybe a wing back to replace Moore. Do you see them maybe investing like that, or how do you think this summer will play out for them? I imagine it will be a massive amount of change, but in turn, I look at the Currans and I'm like, will they be about next season? Can you rely on Colin Coates to be that bridge gap at times? You've got a lot of the pieces with the heels, etc. But in turn, there's a bit of work to be done if you're to reset and go again next season, it feels.
Yeah, I think we probably have to be honest, in the sense of the teams around us are. Larne are spending their money, and you can only go so long not spending the same sort of money before those teams start to get away from you, especially the way the league's going. There's more money in the league now. Maybe a few years ago, it was only really the likes of Linfield spending the money, obviously, so the rest of us could compete with each other. But, with Larne and stuff spending more money now and Linfield doing the same, there's only so long before we have to get on that,
I've bigged up this possibility a few times this season, but I think this would be absolute fact. If Newry go to Windsor Park and win, that is the shock of the season. For sure.
I think they'll hold on for a little bit, but then once one goes in, I think that'll be the floodgates. I don't know how bad E2's injury is from the cup final, but Chris McCallion really looked the part. He was my man of the match. I just think we'll have far too much for them in the end, and with fans in the ground as well. After that decision was overturned, I can't see anything but Linfield win.
Similar to the questions I was asking Joe about Cliftonville, I look at Linfield and I maybe wrongly theorised that perhaps that European night was really where it was a moment for the club where, if it was to happen, I do think there would have been different recruitment. There would have been potentially players being brought in. They could have looked at how they progressed differently. That didn't happen. That somewhat left them in the lurch, and that's why you've had this. Look, you've great players, no doubt, but I don't think Linfield went into the summer with the plan to go into the rest of the season with the team that they have. And I do think that the Robbie McDaid question was a big distraction throughout the season. Edie Vertanen took his place rightfully there. You've had Lafferty, Chris McKee's finding form now. You also had the Jordan Stewart question lingering over. What will Linfield do this summer if it doesn't work out that the Gibson's there? What's the big area? Is it up front? Is it maybe bringing in a bit of pace at the wing back position? Could we potentially see a completely new shape? What will it be so that you don't have this situation again for Linfield where they're not getting the goals in the big games? Because they can beat the Portadowns and the Newrys, well, up until this Saturday, all they like, but it's the draws against the big six teams. How do they address it? Because Cal Lafferty's come in and he hasn't been the answer so far.
I think first things that need sorted are Vertanen and Finlayson both need signed permanently. If we can do that, I think they've been great this season. We sort of need to look at a new midfielder. Where Mulgrew can't go on forever, and Stevie Fallon had a bad injury there, so you just don't know how he's going to come back. And then I think what you said, we definitely need a bit of pace. We need something different for when we play the bigger teams. I don't understand why Chris McKee hasn't been more involved this season. I think it's bound to have been a kick in the teeth for him, Lafferty coming in, not really doing much and keeping his place for... Well, he only didn't play because he wasn't registered on Sunday. So hopefully McKee getting a couple of assists on Sunday will keep him in the team. But I don't think, I'm sure many of Linfield fans would agree, I don't think the recruitment has been great under Healy. There's a lot more misses than there are hits. And, especially with him being such a good striker in his playing days, it's frustrating that we just can't seem to get in an out and out goal scorer. E2 this year's been as close as we've had to that. And Christy Manzinga a couple of seasons back, but then even he fell off. So I think the priorities are get those boys signed permanently and then something different. And I would have Jordan Stewart back in a heartbeat from that loan. I just think he's so good, even if you're bringing him off the bench, unless he didn't like that, and that's why he wanted to move. But I just think he can provide that wee moment of magic, slip someone in. I just think he's such a game changer to have, and I would never have sent him out to Glenavon.
Particularly when you look at Lord, I think in the striker position, how well they've been able to make it work. They shift McDaid, and actually someone experienced like McDaid could do wonders for Linfield this season, in the way he's been having to drag up his Ballymena team, and even bringing in Ryan, like what a signing he's been. Look, he came from the Scottish leagues and he was not thrown to the side. His team was like, okay, we're losing Ryan here to Larne, so he was highly recruited, and I think there's been plenty of gambles for Linfield, and E2 has worked out, let's be fair. Now hasn't been there in the big games, and it's making more cohesive. From an outsider's point of view, it's that cohesive team. Someone that's been rumoured to potentially be out of that cohesive team is one Lyndon Kane of Coleraine. They try to keep their season going, bounce back from that final loss, going down to Mourneview Park. Shall I get the dice out to try and predict what the score will be in this game?
That could genuinely be anything. You could have 4 separate teams turning up, and you don't know what combination you're going to get. I fancy. Oh, I don't even know. I don't even know who I fancy. High score and draw. There you go.
0-0. Why not? Defense stands true and makes it happen. Carrick, welcome back, Glentoran. I'm sure they'll love to do that. Can they say, okay, redo, let's do it again. We're ready now. We're not going to let you come back with all these players coming from out wide. We're not going to let Conor McMenamin run down the right, dip onto his left, and whip it in, because usually when that happens, it leads to something good for Glentoran. Carrick against Glentoran.
I'm hoping the Carrick have learned this time around. I don't know. I mean, after that Glenavon result, I could see Glentoran just being a wee bit shaky. So I'm actually going to say the Carrick are going to win this.
Ross, this was me last week. This is me.
I said 3-1. It'll be 3-0 to Glentoran in 10 minutes.
I had the whole big board out. I was like, and then Macquarie plus Nedis Macalitis, and then it all went poorly. So I'm going to completely avoid that, and we'll end with Portadown hosting Crusaders. I said there earlier how if Portadown were to stay up, they needed like a big crazy last minute win to make it happen. I don't think they've got anything against the top 6. Could it all change now at home? Get Crusaders onto the grass pitch and they'll look like, like those animals that have been stuck inside for so long, like looking at the grass being like, what's that? Will they know how to play it? They haven't had good times going to Mid-Ulster this year, so perhaps Portadown can steal some of the stuff out of Glenavon's playbook and get what would be probably the best result of Niall Curry's tenure, but again, I doubt it.
I just think it's a Crusaders thumping. As relatively poor as Crusaders are away from home, I just think way too much for the Porch.
Midfield still looking absolutely excellent for Crusaders. Forsyth with the goal, Ross Clark coming in there, as we said, on Monday. I think Portadown will want to try and keep this goalless for as long as possible, but as we saw against Carrick, sometimes that's harder than it looks. Perhaps it depends what defense turns up for Crusaders, but that is a massive tough ask. They'll be looking ahead to all those games in the bottom half of the split. I actually have it marked down here of how it's looking. So we talked earlier about who might finish last. So Portadown have Carrick, Ballymena and Newry at home, and then go away to Glenavon and Dungannon. Newry have Glenavon and Ballymena at home and have 3 games away against Dungannon, Carrick and Portadown. For Dungannon, they also have 3 home games, including the vital games against Portadown and Newry. They also have Carrick coming back after that win there last week, and they go away to Glenavon and Ballymena. Does that favour any of them particularly? Like chatting to some Newry people, they said that actually playing at home is probably a bad thing for them, and I can see that with bright sparks like McGovern and them getting a win down at Mourneview Park. As a final note, do you think that gives them any advantage?
I think I don't really think it matters, especially coming into the summer months. Pitches will hopefully pick up a little bit, so for Newry's sake, I think that'll maybe help them a little bit. What's big for the Ports, I think, is the fact they have a local derby in the split. If you're going to get up for a game, it's Glenavon for them. So I think that's a one-up for them against the other teams. You know, Dungannon and Newry don't really have those local rivalries in the league. I think, look, maybe I'm clutching at straws, hoping that the Ports stay up, but I just think it's all set up for them.
Where's all this love from a blue man? I know the Flynet boys are now like mini Portadown fans from the time started the club, but this is I don't ever remember this being such affinity between Belfast and Mid-Ulster.
Oh, I've been sucked in from Saturday night there. I am all in on the Ports. I'm tempted to go Portadown home and away from now on. I'm not sure.
Wow.
He is not joking. Since he's come back, he has had the highlights on RTV. I don't know how many times. Honestly, he keeps showing. I was like, yes, Ross, I've seen the goals. Keep showing me.
Oh, fantastic, lads. Right, get your promo out. Where can people follow? I'll be plugging you on my social media pages. But yes, where can people find you individually, and where can people find this elusive Around the Grounds NI?
So Twitter, us personally, is Ross Welsh 8 and Josef McCallion 24, and then Twitter AT Grounds NI, and then Instagram and TikTok Around the Grounds NI. Really trying to push the TikTok, so support us over there if you can.
Sweet. All the best, whatever TikTok is. And yes, thanks guys. A pleasure to chat to you. It's great that finally get out and proud blue man on the podcast. We're nearly there. I would say good luck to both of you for the rest of the season, but you will be sticking pins in Lorne voodoo dolls right now. It would be like absolutely, if anybody who wins the title would be an incredible story. I think everybody's pushing for Portadown because that could be an incredible story if that happens. But we've got plenty more games of football to be played, and if this week is anything like last week, it is going to be an absolute stormer. Guys, chat to you soon. Thanks again.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I don't know if you're a regular listener to the random ramblings at the end of the program, but even I am starting to think surely doing a bespoke one every single time is just a bit odd and probably could be more efficient. But no, here I am doing it, changing it up every single time, riffing as I go along. We're going to keep it topical. Might be some snow this week at some point. If there's not, don't blame me. Go blame one of those famous weather presenters, because I would like to watch some football this weekend. Fingers crossed. Lots of games. 6 games across Friday and Saturday. But you know that because you listen to the podcast. If you want to hear if things are going to go skew-if, or would you like some witty, relevant banter, you know you can follow this podcast on social media. It's at Kicking Match on Instagram, at Kicking Match on Twitter, at Kicking Match on Facebook. It's kickingmatch at gmail.com if you'd like to send me a little email, or you can send me a rather big email. Just don't make it spam. You can also listen to this podcast through smart speaker. You just say, hey smart speaker, please play Kicking Match, an Irish League podcast. Thank you to the boys for hanging out. I've got a lot of fun guests. A big debut is coming over the next few weeks, and I think you're all going to be really buzzing and excited about it. The crossover you all want is hopefully going to happen. Till then, see you soon, chat soon, tally ho, cheerio, fond adieu, peace out.